Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on Defend Your Training Budget. I've got Paul Walsh sitting next to me ready to go, but before I do that, I just want to tell you a little bit about HR Observers and what it's about. It is an initiative from our company which seeks to be the ultimate platform for HR professionals, and we dissipate information through various channels. One of them is our LinkedIn group. We have a Twitter feed. We also have a very, very good website. So if you have time, please have a look at the HR Observer website. As we go through this afternoon, I just want to remind you that the slides that you see, as well as the entire recording of the webinar, will be available to view later on our SlideShare page, as well as our YouTube channel. When the webinar finishes, you'll see a survey that pops up. And if you could just give that a few moments of your time to give us your feedback, we would very much appreciate that. And lastly, any questions that you have, Paul will answer right at the end. So without any more delay, I'll hand you over to Paul now. Thank you very much.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar. You'll see in front of you a slide which, if you're interested, gives you a breakdown on my experience and what I've been doing over the last 20 or so years. Just to reassure you, I look much better looking in real life than I do on that picture. I say that on all my webinars. So today we're going to be having a look at this, defending your training budget. I think it's probably quite a timely webinar to have, and as it says there on that slide, I won't read out the whole slide for you obviously, but in times when there's pressure on us, whether it's oil prices, whether it's just normal cost consciousness by organisations, we seem to be a very easy target within HR and certainly within the training budget to have our budgets cut. There's very many reasons for this, but basically I think it all comes down to the fact that we still cannot demonstrate any return on investment for our training activities, even though, as it says on the slide, we've been discussing this and it's been at the top of summits and conferences since 1991. Now, I've only got half an hour on this webinar, so I'm not going to go into great detail. You can get more detail if you attend one of my budgeting courses in March, or indeed an audit course in January. But just to give you a rough outline, because I think we need an outline so we can begin to start work and defend our budgets in the future. So, some of you who have been in HR for a while might recognize this model. It's based on the Kirkpatrick training model. So what we have here is when we send somebody on training, we need to evaluate the effectiveness of that training. And I'm leaving money to one side for a moment. Let's just have a look at the effectiveness of the training. Now, effectiveness goes in 4 different levels. Level 1, as you can see there, is called reaction. So we should be asking people, were they happy with the course? Did they enjoy the course? Was the lunch nice? Was the air conditioning okay? Was the trainer presentable? That kind of thing. Although it's not got nothing to do with return on investment, and it's certainly got nothing to do with effective training, it is important. If your students, if your delegates do not enjoy the training, they're less likely to learn. Now, I'm pretty confident that people listening to this afternoon will already be doing this. Most companies will supply some kind of feedback form at the end of training, which asks those questions. Were your objectives met? Was the trainer good? Was the room nice and comfortable? That kind of thing. So that kind of thing we're already measuring. It's important, as I've said, but it doesn't lead us to ROI. So we've got to come up a level. We've got to come to level 2. And this question is, did the people who attended the course actually learn anything? Again, it's important, but I would stress that just because somebody learned something on a course doesn't mean that it's going to impact your business. But nevertheless, it's important. If people are going to do something different at work, they need to learn something on the course. So we should be asking questions, did you learn? And some kind of assessment should take place either by the trainer before the student leaves, or when the student gets back to the workplace to find out, did they learn something? What's becoming more traditional now in many companies is that when somebody returns from training, they have to do a short presentation to a group of people, number one, to share the knowledge, but also to demonstrate they've learned something. This is a very good idea. You could ask the trainer, or you could indeed ask Informa, if you're using Informa as your training provider, to do some kind of assessment themselves. Any trainer who's any good at all can very easily put in some kind of assessment on the end. So what we need to know is, did they enjoy it? Level 1. Did they learn something? Both very important, but doesn't lead us towards ROI. Doesn't give us a return on our investment. We could send somebody on a course that they enjoy. We could send somebody on a course where they learn something, and then nothing happens when they get back. So we need to come up a level, and now it starts to get a little tricky. We need to find out if, as a result of the course, the student, your employee, came back from the course and did something different. He started to apply the learning from the course in the workplace. Now, to get this information, of course, we can't do it from HR. We need to contact our line managers. And we have to start asking questions of the line managers. Has the person done anything different? Has he actually put the learning that he got from the course into play in the workplace? Now, if he did, this is good. We can now start to measure the effectiveness of the training course. We can now say that students went on this particular course, they came back and they were doing something different. Their behavior had changed. This is good, but unfortunately, once again, it doesn't really lead us to ROI. For example, somebody goes on a course for leadership. They enjoy the course, they learn some theories of leadership, and when they come back to the workplace, you can see, and their manager can see, that they're actually applying some of this learning. They're building better team meetings, they're having better agendas, they're doing things, and they're using Gantt charts. Now, this is all very well and good, and it's a measure we should have, but is it actually contributing to the business in terms of profit, in terms of increased revenue, in terms of better customer service, less customer complaints, less defects if you're a manufacturing type business? Because it's at level 4, business impact, where we can actually convert the changes that have been made into money and therefore get a return on investment. To work out return on investment, you only actually need 2 numbers. You need the cost, sometimes called the initial investment, and you need the return. The cost is something we in HR always know. We know the cost of our training. We know the cost of hotel fees, any airfares, any per diems we have to pay. We can work this out very easily. What we need to have for ROI, of course, is the return figure. And we can only get this if we measure at level 4, business impact. So let me go on to that. Now, within the business, although not necessarily within the human resources department, the business has lots and lots of data available to us. Data that we can use to measure business impact. Financial performance is one. We have profit and loss figures, we have ROCE figures, we have lots of financial figures within the business, as I say, not necessarily in HR, that we should be looking at. In certain parts of the business, we will have productivity numbers. Again, an essential number to measure business impact, not necessarily in HR. For ourselves, of course, in HR, we have turnover. I've always heard from HR people and training managers that if we cut the training budget, people won't go on a training course and they'll leave. Well, I'd suggest you set out to try and prove that, because I don't think it's actually true. Another figure we have out there is sales. If you're a company that sells products or services, your sales and marketing people will be full of figures. If you're a manufacturing type industry, you'll be measuring quality, defect rates. And of course, if you have any kind of customer service department, you'll be measuring customer satisfaction, and the list goes on and on and on. Now, what we need to do in human resources, and the training department in particular, is to link our training to available data in the company. Now, I'm going to stress again, I'm not asking the training department to make up new measures. These measures already exist out there in the company. We need to go and look at them. Now, here's an example of what could happen with training. Let's say that we're going to send some people on a training program regarding quality or excellence, some kind of ISO or TQM type training course. Now, are we actually bothering to measure the effect? Because the figures are already there. Your operational managers in a manufacturing setting will be measuring quality, and it might be something like this. They might be measuring number of defects on a product per million items or something like that. Now, what we've got to do in the training department is have a look at these numbers. So we're going to send people on a quality course, and let's get the numbers. Now, before training, we find out that the defect rate in the operational department in the manufacturing site is 120 units per million produced. 3 months later, after the training has taken place, we should go back and revisit these numbers, which, as I stressed, the operational manager already has. And you may find that that defect rate has dropped down to 80 units per million. Now, could I just say that this is a classroom slide? I doubt very much you will ever find a kind of improvement like that. But the question I would put to you, a rhetorical question I would put to you is, if you saw something like that, 120 units defects per million before training, 80 units after training, who gets the credit for that? Is it the operational manager? Is it processes? Or is it training? Because I believe it's training. And I also believe that HR need to go out and look at these things. At the moment, I hate to say this, but in most HR departments, we're not even looking. We're spending money on lots and lots of quality programs and not even trying to find out whether they've been effective. Another classic example, of course, is sales. Those of you who have sales departments will know that sales training can be, and indeed should be, expensive if you're going to give them the best. Now, do we actually check sales figures before and after training? The answer, I'm afraid to say, and I'm hoping you're all nodding in agreement with me out there, is that we do not. We evaluate training programs, we'll try and get the best quality, we'll know how much it costs, and we'll send people away for sales training. Now, are we actually missing a trick here in HR? Perhaps we should be looking at figures like this, which are readily available to us. We only have to ask the sales managers. It could be that the average sales per person was 20 units before training. After training, it could be 30 units. I doubt whether we'll see that kind of improvement myself, but I hope you get the drift. Are we looking at it? Are we measuring? Because if we're not looking at this, we stand no chance of getting ROI. Basically, the difference between 20 units per salesperson and 30 units per salesperson is our return figure, because we can convert that into income, into revenue. And your salespeople will also have figures to show you what the actual profit is of a salesperson doing 20 units per salesperson and 30 units. That conversion into money gives us our return figure, because we already have the cost of the program, we now have the return, we have ROI. Now, I know what I've been talking about is what many of us call hard skills: sales, quality, customer satisfaction. And some of you out there are probably saying, what about soft skills? Let's have a look. First, here's the model. I've picked this model. Many of you may have seen some models on ROI. I've picked this one quite simply because it's the easiest and it doesn't get too complicated. So as I've been saying, what we have to do is collect data, and the data's out there, and the key word is collect. We don't have to invent any measurements. The measurements are already there. We have to collect the data. We then have to isolate the effects of HR and training. In other words, I've been telling you that we look at a number before training and then 3 months after training. We've got to make sure that nothing else happened during that period which could cause an increase in business performance. So we've got to isolate the effects of training. We've then got to convert the data to monetary values, which I tried to explain on the last slide. If sales has gone up, that means revenue has gone up, and we can work out what the profit figure is for that. Come down to the green one at the bottom right-hand corner of the model, and you'll see the other part of the ROI. We have the monetary values at the top. We know the program costs. We put all the program costs together, and now we can calculate ROI. We can also, by the way, in blue, the blue box there, is have a look at any intangible benefits like motivation or employee satisfaction or all the other softer intangible things we talk about in HR. So it's a very simple process once we have the data. Now this is something that troubles a lot of HR professionals. I'm not sure why, but they do get concerned with it. I once did an ROI exercise on a mobile telephone company in Oman, and the figures that came back gave us a return on investment of 734%. People outside of HR believed it. Nobody in HR did believe it. We don't seem to believe our own mission, if you like, that training does work. So people in HR worry about it. They say it can't just be training, it must have been something else. So here are three methods. I know there's 4 boxes up there, but the last 2 are basically the same. There's 3 methods we can use to isolate the effects of training. So we're going to send people on a training course, and then we're going to make sure that they're isolated from other effects. Now there's 3 ways of doing it. Number 1 is by far and away the best. How about this, training manager? Let's train one group of employees and deliberately not train another. I've let that sink in for a moment. Let's train one group of employees and not train another. If you're in a 24/7 environment, let's train the night shift, let's not train the day shift. If you've got different locations and different branches, let's consciously train one branch or one part of our department and not train the other, and then see what happens. Now, all things being equal, if we can measure an improvement in the group that's been trained, and we notice that the group who have not trained has been status quo, that difference is our ROI. Now, many people will say, well, Paul, this gives us operational problems, and I say, HR, get a grip. We're already doing this at the moment. When we have a large training program to roll out, we never roll it out all in one go. We don't train 100 employees on the same days. But what we do is we allow the operational people to dictate who goes and when. I think we need to be stronger here. And we actually dictate, in consultation, of course, with our operational colleagues, that we are going to set up a control group. Therefore, we want this group of workers to go, and the next group of workers will go 1 month, 2 months, or even 3 months later. Any training managers out there, I think, will agree with me. We kind of do this already, but we don't do it in a controlled way. We do it in a haphazard way. Using control groups is the best way of isolating the effects of HR and/or training. The second method is this. It's called trend lines. Now, we can only actually do this where people in your organization are actually forecasting stuff. So I've got here, again, a classic example, and forgive me if some of you are thinking, oh, he's sticking to the easy stuff. Perhaps I am sticking to the easy stuff in this part of the presentation, but what I would actually say to you is, are you doing this even though it is easy? So what you have here, and again, I've kept it simple, and you will not see such a big improvement in real life. But we're going to have a look at sales. Now, you approach your sales manager, and the blue line that's running from January through to May, the join up line there, along there, that's the actual sales performance so far this year. So it's going steadily up. Now, based on that, in May, we can ask the sales manager or the sales director or the marketing manager, what is his projected forecast for the rest of the year? And you can see that blue dotted line continues is the trend. That will be a forecast of what's going to happen. Now, I will repeat myself here. You'll never see anything that looks as simple as like that. Lines do go up and down. But I hope you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. Once we have that trend forecast, we can now do the training. We do the training and we return. And now what we do is measure the actual sales performance as opposed to the trend projection. And I think we have an excellent case for saying that the difference between the actual sales performance and the trended forecast is our return. It's our return on investment for our training. It's not as good as control groups, but it gives us a really good opportunity to test out the effectiveness of training, and I think we should take it. For those of you in HR who are scratching your head, say, where can we get these figures from? Let me tell you that sales managers are doing these figures, if not weekly, then certainly monthly. Sales directors live and die by these kind of figures, and believe me, they'll have them available to you. This last attempt to get ROI is based on science. Personally, I don't like it. It's very much a last resort method for measuring ROI on your hard skills. And what it is here. Let's say we didn't do a control group. Perhaps that was operationally impossible. We're operating somewhere where there is no forecast. We can't get a good trend line comparison. But what we do know is that we did some training. Business performance has improved, but some other things were happening at the same time. Now, in this example I've got up here on the screen, you'll see that we had the training program. We also changed some of our procedures in the same time period. We adjusted our standards, if you like, the way we do things. We also revised our incentive plan. Not a clever thing to do when you're doing the training program, but we did. And of course, number 5 there was a favorite of managers. They will say to you, yes, there was an improvement, but it wasn't the training. We took special attention and paid special attention to this over the same period. So what we do is we list all these various effects on business performance and ask the people who attended the training, but who are also doing the work, what do they think? And as you can see here in the third column along, percentage improvement was caused by. We have participants here who say that 50% of the business improvement was down to the training program, 10% to change in procedures, 20% to incentive plan, and so on. The next question we ask is how confident are they of the percentage improvement they've just given? Now, this is difficult, and the reason I don't like this particular method of isolating the effects of training is that sometimes we have to actually train people how to do this particular method. But here, as you can see, participant said he is 70% confident that the 50% figure he gave is correct. He's a lot more confident about item number 4, the revision to the incentive plan, because he's got 90% confidence. The last thing we do, as is detailed on that slide, is we then times the percentage improvement by the confidence expressed. 50% times 70% comes to 35%. What we can now say is that 35% of the business improvement was down to training. I know I may have switched some of you off there talking about percentages and numbers. I don't like this particular method myself, but it's there as a last resort. And I urge you, if we haven't got the other ways of doing it, this is a good way of doing it. The way I always look at it is very simple. If it's a small program with only 3 or 4 people on it, don't do this. You won't get good numbers, and they'll be widely diverse. But if it's a program where 100 people attended, and we ask 100 people to do this, and the figures they're coming out with are broadly similar, I think we can take that as real evidence of what's going on. Now, lastly, for those of you still with me, soft skills. Training department has really got to get a grip with this. We need to have an assessment of somebody's performance before they go on training, and then we've got to have an assessment of their performance when they return, and this has got to become part of the normal nomination process. I would urge you when you're starting this to experiment, start with the expensive training. Another vital question, point 4 on the slide, that I think we should ask. When a manager nominates somebody for training, we should actually ask them, what would happen if the training does not take place? If I do not send this employee, what will happen? Now that could give us the answer we're looking for. The manager may very well say, our customer satisfaction will go down, our defect rate will go up, something else will happen. And that could give us the answer that we're looking for. So please do that. Now what we've got to have is a small little scale, and I have one here on the screen in front of you. You can use any scale you like. Mine goes from no ability up to can coach others. So somebody's about to go training. We asked the supervisor, and as part of the normal nomination procedure, can you please rate the person on the skill that we're sending the employee to be trained on? So obviously, if he has no ability, little ability, or he's at number 2 or number 3, we'll send him training. If the manager says he can do number 4 or number 5, well, then he doesn't go training. He can already do it. Now, here's the leap of faith, human resources, that you've got to go along with. On soft skills, if somebody moves from 3 to 4, has there been an increase in business performance? Now with soft skills, let's take something like leadership. We're going to send somebody on a leadership course. His manager says that he's performing at the moment at level 3. In other words, he can do some parts of the job, but other parts he can't do. We assess him 3 months after the course, and the manager says, great, fantastic, thank you very much. He now performs at level 4. He performs independently. Can we trace that to profit, to loss, to revenue, to costs? I'm afraid very often the answer is no. But what we've got is we have increased the value of that employee. Now, please bear with me with this. I know it can get sticky, but bear with me. Before training, you have to ask yourself the question, how much will we pay in this employee? Let's say it's 50,000 dirhams. We were paying this employee 50,000 dirhams before training. When he comes back from training, how much are we paying him? The answer is exactly the same, of course. So we were paying this guy 50,000 dirhams and he couldn't do the job properly. We've sent him on training. He now can do the job properly, and we're still paying him the same amount of money. What we've done is we've increased the value of that employee. Now, this is soft skills training, guys. This is not hard skills. For hard skills, you use good, hard data that the company already has. This is the soft skill stuff that we always struggle with. So I hope you agree with me that although we may not have an increase in profit or revenue, what we've got is an increase in value, which is very different to profit. A man named Phillips back in 1997 wrote the book on return on investment. He actually called it ROTI, return on training and investment. And he came up with this calculation. He says, the baseline skill set before training, as I said, so we've got a guy who's a 3. We then review it at a suitable period after training. That suitable period is normally 3 months. And now this is the kind of complicated bit, but he's worked this out for us after years of observing. I would have to say mainly in the United States, but still over various sectors, various jobs. And what he says, the improvement should be assigned a value or a weight. And we need to know how much time that particular skill is being used. And he says that an improvement in a skill that is used 50% of an employee's time is given a weight of 0.05. Now, if that skill was only be used for 40% of an employee's time, the weight would be 0.04, 70%, 0.07, and so on. We can now work out the return of value added. The economic value we're going to use is that person's salary. So 50,000 dirhams times, in this example, 0.05 will give you the return. I have an example here for you to work through using slightly different figures. We assess an employee at level 3, as I've said, and 3 months afterwards, he's assessed at level 4. We talk to the manager. How often is that skill used? Oh, about half the time. If it's a leadership course, yeah, half the time he's directly leading his team. 50% of the time he's in his office doing admin work. So leadership skill is 50%. Let's say his salary is $60,000 per year. The training cost, which we all know, in this case is $1,200 total. So if we use Philip's weighted approach on this, we've got his annual salary of $60,000 times the weighting of 0.05 equals $3,000. This, according to Philips and to many companies who are using this, is the value that training has added. Now, I know us guys in HR, we can debate this sort of thing for weeks and weeks and weeks, but believe me, the work has been done for you. Google Philips ROTI if you want more information on how he got his weight in figures. But have a look at this. I think we can bring this into our organizations. For hard skills, we've got sales, we've got defects, we've got productivity, we've got all those kind of things, which we must look at, guys. We've got to look at it. For soft skills, we have this approach. It's not about income, profit, or cost. It's about value, and I think we should use it. So, to sum the whole thing up, the information to measure the impact of hard skills training already exists. And I'm sorry, guys, we need to go out and get it. We've been a bit lazy here in HR, I include myself. The information's already there. We need to go and get it. Using the soft skills approach with Philips, it gives us the ability, if nothing else, if you're not convinced with my argument about value, by using the Philips equation on our training courses, we can at least compare training programs and their effectiveness. We can say, well, according to Philips, this course gives us an added value of $3,000. This course only gives us an added value of $2,000. So we can actually compare courses. And when the company comes to us and says, guys, we need to cut the training budget, we can actually kick back. We can kick back and say, please, please do not take away our hard skills training because we're getting return on investment of 70 and 80%. And we can also kick back on our softer skills by saying we're adding value to people. And all I'd like to say to you guys is we've got to try. We really have to try. And I'd be interested in any feedback that you could give through Informa of any efforts you might try on this. Okay. I'll give some time now. I hope you follow that through. I'll give some time now for any questions, and before any come through, I'll just ask if anybody's interested on more information. Informa does run a full 5-day budgeting course which covers this in more detail. It's also covered on a HR course that takes place in January, and please come along if you have any more interest in the subject. Thank you. Okay, it seems that I've stunned you all into silence on this particular one. I do realise, I realised right from the start that trying to cover such a complex subject in half an hour is tough, but I felt under the present economic climate that we're all operating in, it was worth a go. So I hope you enjoyed it, and hope to hear and meet from you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.